Hello, everyone. Welcome, and thank you so much for being here. Um, Today, you're joining us to talk about VisibleThread Next Gen, so our unified platform that will support teams from opportunity identification to post-submission and delivery. So we're really excited for everyone to be here and to give you a preview of what we've been working on. So today, you're going to be hearing from myself. My name is Allison Ritz. I'm the Director of Product Marketing at VisibleThread, and then Fergal McGovern, who is our founder and our Chief Product Officer. So just a few housekeeping items for everybody before we get started. So we have the live Q&A going. Submit as many questions as you would like. We do have time for Q&A at the end. We will address as many of those as possible. And as always, if we don't get to some of your questions, we'll follow up afterwards and make sure you get an answer. In the console, you can sign up. The link is there to sign up for our early adopter program. We'll also send that with the follow-up materials as well. We are, we are recording and we are going to share the slides. You'll get that via email afterwards. And then, again, in the console is the link to sign up for our upcoming in-person forum in DC in October. So links to those pages to learn more about our early adopter program and our next in-person forum where we'll be talking more about developments and roadmap and then some other hearing from some customers. So great event there. Again, any questions that you have, pop them in the chat. I'll also be asking some questions to the group and doing some touch base throughout the process. So just keep the chat active. But I'm going to go ahead and get started, and I'm going to kick it over to Fergal.
Hey, Alison, thanks so much. And thanks, everybody, for joining. Really appreciate your time and attention. So I guess as we are entering our next phase, it's a very exciting time for VisibleThread. We have been around the government contracting space specifically for over 15 years. It's in one sense, it seems very long. In another sense, it seems like it just started yesterday. And as founder, I've recently transitioned from CEO to Chief Product Officer. And I have to say the last 3 months has been the most exciting time in my period at VisibleThread since starting the company. So I'm excited really to kind of share with you our direction. And the first thing I would kind of want to make super clear is our experience in government contracting, I think, is second to none. There are many great vendors out there, but we've been around this market and understand the pain that most people in government contracting feel, and feel like we've been serving many of you already. And in fact, 11 of the top 15 US government contractors use us, and we really appreciate the trust you're putting in us. So what we're going to share today is our direction going forward. It's really a focus on cradle to grave, and we'll talk about that in a moment. The second thing that I really want to emphasize is this AI thing. Over the last 2 years, I've been writing newsletters and kind of talking to various customers about AI. We are 100% committed to AI, responsible AI, AI that makes sense in the context of the job that you're trying to do. And AI is phenomenal. I use it every day. I'm sure many of you also do. But it's super important to layer it into with technologies that help uncover insights in a reliable and traceable way. So we're embracing AI internally in our product teams, in our sales teams, in our marketing teams, as well as directly within the product lineup. So that commitment is super important to us. So that being said, let me get into kind of where we stand and where we're going. So for us, it's kind of 3 pillars of product evolution. The very first pillar is the fact that up till now, we've been extremely good at certain super important, let's call it tactical jobs, things like shredding, things like acronym checks, things like readability analysis, using AI to generate first draft content. What we are transitioning to is a full lifecycle RFP intelligence platform. So we will basically offer capabilities that help salespeople, BD people, do analysis better, faster, in an accurate way, right to proposal management, the end-to-end lifecycle around proposal management, contracts management, program management, post-submission. So end-to-end lifecycle. And you'll see that as I kind of share some examples of where the product is going to go. The second thing, and it's kind of an evolution of what I talked about a moment ago, is that What we don't want to do is use generative AI in ways that kind of treat it almost as a black box. When you prompt with generative AI, you get an answer, but oftentimes it's kind of hard to trace where that answer came from. And to differentiate between hallucinations versus accurate sourced material can often be quite tricky. And you see this in certain products as well. So for us, traceability is job number one. We want to use generative AI in conjunction with quote unquote deterministic software. Deterministic means 100% accurate, 100% repeatable in a way that gives you full insights, the insights that you need. So it's a bit like our name, VisibleThread. It's a visible thread to the source content. And that's really what we've always stood for and what we will continue to stand for in the context of AI. The third and final thing, and again, it goes back 15 years of legacy and working with people like yourselves, is that we never, ever will compromise on security. We are deployed into air-gapped environments, into SCIFs, into fully on-prem environments. And that's something that we will continue to use or continue to support as we go forward. So as you're looking at this trio of full lifecycle intelligence, AI grounded in evidence, and security, these are our pillars. This is what we stand for. So I'm going to pass it back to Alison, who's going to talk us through the lifecycle and how we do some of this work. Alison, I can't hear you. I'm not sure if you're on mute.
Apologize, I'm not sure how that happened, but I am here. Sorry, everyone. So as Fergal covered, the VisibleThread platform will support at all stages of the acquisition lifecycle. So beyond increasing efficiencies, we're delivering a solution that will increase analytic capabilities, while we still ensure that the content is accurate and adheres to your quality standards. So I know everyone's process looks a little bit different, but here we see the bones of a typical process. So in working with our customers across size and industry, the general segmentation that we see here is kind of what we see most frequently. So we've built the VT platform to support your current process and to facilitate the most crucial steps of the RFP lifecycle. So in the opportunity assessment and capture phase, teams are making decisions to analyze and then also decisions to begin to pursue opportunities based on what they understand about potential requirements, risk, delivery items, and making internal determinations on whether this is something that makes sense to pursue. So the VT platform can help by identifying opportunities that align with your capabilities, align with your past work, and our traceable scoring rubric helps to surface both strengths and weaknesses, as well as identify some of that qualifying performance based on known and expected requirements. So allows teams to make informed decisions to quickly either pursue an opportunity or disqualify an opportunity. Moving on to our pre-proposal phase, as you continue to pursue, the system allows us to really start to break down requirements, break down risk, and begin to craft a response. So look at competitor analysis, make sure we're hitting the mark from a strategic perspective, create initial outlines, support win strategies, and support you through your team reviews and your gate processes in order to make sure that you are making decisions based on data, based on facts, as well as with the assistance of the platform to surface some of those opportunities. So as you move through the proposal process, so proposal prep, proposal creation process, we want to make sure that we are helping in a lot of different ways, but we're giving you accurate, grounded data, and then also helping to create content, helping to leverage AI, helping to leverage LLM to not only facilitate some of these processes, but also introduce you to new ideas and open up the path to what you can see. So here we're looking at accurate compliance matrix creation, and Fergal will talk about this a little bit later, what our approach will look like in a new platform, combining the different types of technologies. So accurate compliance matrices, content grounded in your data, handling amendments and version review, contractual risk review. Just make sure that everything is compliant, everything is compelling, that we're following through with our win themes and our approach from our earlier stages, and continuing to support the vision and support the path to winning. So from a post-submittal perspective, we're talking about those final assessments, so compliance and gap review, final quality assessments and revision. So anything we need to do as a team to support Gold Team, to support White Glove through those final assessments to make sure that your proposal is as competitive and compelling as possible. And then, post-mortem, helping to facilitate the post-mortem review, tag and classify items that can be used later, past performance to be referenced, approaches that you want to classify. So a lot of work can go in the back end in order to make it easier and make your proposals more effective on the next venture. So I'm going to kick it back over to Fergal, and we are going to jump into the platform and show you a few examples of how we're going to approach these things.
Great, thanks, Alison. So to Alison's point, we're going to talk about each of the stages, and we'll start with kind of the first stage, the sales upfront BD capture phase. So let's just kind of start that with the following. So again, this is the new VisibleThread platform. This particular screen is showing a set of opportunities that we pulled in from sam.gov. We will have various integrations, including eBuy and sam.gov, etc. And in this case, I'm seeing one opportunity that is interesting, enterprise cybersecurity. It's an opportunity from the Department of Homeland Security. So I would like to dig into that and assess it for fit. So let's see how we go about that. So here we see a number of opportunities side by side. Each opportunity is scored on a certain set of dimensions, technical dimensions, business dimensions, etc. And I'm going to focus in on the enterprise cybersecurity one, and let's just see what's kind of driving those scores. So effectively, we're saying, during your kind of qualification steps upfront in the cycle, let's not pursue something that isn't aligned with what we can deliver on, or that isn't aligned from a business standpoint. Okay, so this goes into a little bit more detail about the enterprise cybersecurity opportunity. And I'm just going to kind of show you, this is a visual which gives you a nice radar chart about where we're scoring on different dimensions. And I'm going to ask Alison maybe to explain some of those scores and kind of give you a sense for each score in turn, and then I'll kind of take it from there and we'll drill into each of these or some of these.
Absolutely. So we're looking at 5 different sort of buckets when we're talking about scoring criteria, different things that are going to be considered as we're looking at, is this opportunity a good fit for our organization? So from a business alignment perspective, can we do this work? Do we work under this NAICS code? Have we done this type of work before? Have we delivered to this customer before? Are there certain set-asides? What are the contract values? All of those different kind of basic elements of, is this a fit for us? And does it fit our path as far as a business is concerned in our business goals? So then moving to technical alignment. So what is being sought? So what type of services or products is the customer looking for a contractor to deliver? And does that align with our core capabilities in terms of solution fit and really align? And business alignment comes in some other areas here, but is this something that we can do? Is it profitable for us, and do we want to win? From a competitor analysis perspective, so how do we stack up against the market? What does the SWOT analysis look like? Who are the likely bidders? What would their approach be in this type of scenario? So how do we stand up? What are some potential red flags? And what are some things that we can do to create a better market position? Assessing past performance is always incredibly important. Everyone knows that there's always going to be some type of, not always, but most of the time, some type of qualifying performance or past performance element that is part of the equation that you need to have in order to qualify to bid on the opportunity. And then how can we best represent that past performance to make sure that we're setting the stage for how we can deliver on this opportunity. And then what is our risk? So in the front end, we're doing an assessment of the whole opportunity. So we really have to factor in how much we're investing in this to pursue it as an organization and how much risk is associated with that. So is this funded? Is the acquisition cost prohibitive? How much are we going to have to invest in this in order to potentially win? What does that time frame look like? What does our workload look like? And does this fit into our strategic mapping? So what does the risk look like to the business? And how can we overcome that? Are there potential disqualifiers there? So all of this is factored into your best fit score. And then as you'll see in some of our examples, we can break some of these out individually with specific types of assessments in order to get a deeper look.
Okay, so I'm going to take it from there and we'll go into the technical alignment area and we'll give you a quick sense for how we do that kind of scoring. So again, what we're trying to do is understand, do we have the capacity and the capability to deliver on the solution and technology? So what this is doing is basically showing you the analysis in process. There's a lot of analysis that we will do in this case. Effectively, what we're doing is we're looking and slicing up things like the the performance work statement, the SOW, the solicitation, comparing it with our past performance, with our kind of previous contracts. And then what we get is a view like this. And let me explain this view. So what we're seeing here is an automatic dissection of the PWS, the performance work statement of the enterprise cybersecurity op. That's what you see on the left-hand side. We're finding that there are certain key elements of that. For instance, under the tooling category, it's mentioning Jira, Confluence. These are software packages it's looking for. We're also seeing elements about security clearance. So that's what the left-hand side shows you. It is what is appearing automatically that we've analyzed within the opportunity we're assessing. The right-hand grid shows you our past performance and contracts that we have done before. So for instance, DHS Eagle 2, GSA Align 2. So we're on those contracts. We have performance around that. And the greens and oranges and so forth show you an automatic alignment scoring based on accurate, traceable content analysis. So yes, we're using generative AI, but you'll see in a moment that it is fully traceable, and we're using, again, this kind of logic-based software combined. So there's proprietary algorithms going on here. Great. Let's drill into DHS Eagle 2, and we'll see what's underpinning some of these greens that you're seeing here. So now we're kind of going one step deeper. This is effectively traceability to the exact content in that particular document that justifies the scoring. So to explain what you're seeing here on the left-hand side, we're finding that under the testing label, that manual testing is represented a number of times, and the synonyms for that. So this is fuzzy matching also. So there's a lot of proprietary approaches going on here. The middle view shows you the breakout by page or by row of where we're seeing the content, so you can get a really, really solid sense of how we're referring to these and make a judgment, because AI is great, but you must have the human in the loop. It is great at surfacing stuff, but ultimately you need to make the call. So we're basically surfacing that. And then on the right-hand side, this is a very nice new capability. We'll have a full viewer. So the full PDF will be scrollable and viewable. So this trio of kind of being able to look at, we found these content items, these kind of key topics within our original documents, and we were able to see where they align with the opportunity itself is super important. Let me just move on to the next approach here. So that was kind of alignment and getting a technical alignment measure. Past performance. What kind of ratings do we have with the customer? Let's dig into that a little bit. So here, this is a view which shows us three effective kind of subcategories or subcomponents. The first question is, have we done work with the customer before? So here you can see that there's a list. We've done work with the DHS before. If we did work, did we score well in terms of the actual delivery reports and the CPARs? So if we are exceptional, or if we're doing well or poor, that's super important as we actually assess this score. So we're using sentiment analysis here to arrive at those scores. And again, it's fully traceable back to the content that we're using to analyze this. So basically that's super important. Have we done work? Have we done work of a similar nature? And do we have favorable ratings? That's what's going into this overall score. So again, that's just the next dimension. Let's finish out, and this is just giving you a sampling, if you will, of some of these dimensions. I'll finish out with risk and effort. The particular risk I'm going to focus on is commercial risk. And I'm going to look at the content, and I'm going to look at particularly the solicitation here, and I'm going to shred it and identify certain elements that we want to pause on. So here I'm looking at, for instance, on the left-hand side, a set of liability contractual terms. So we're finding liability and liquidated damages and penalty clauses. We're finding warranties. We're finding repair. So that's super important that we actually now use our competency to actually make an assessment. So yes, AI can make an assessment of this doc if you throw it into it, and you can certainly throw that into the AI within the VisibleThread platform. But we want to get a much more focused viewpoint here, which is based on traceable content within the document. And then you make your assessment very quickly. And then you mark these paragraphs as worrisome or not worrisome. And I should emphasize for anybody who's using our products today, everything that you have in VT Docs and VT Writer today will be in here, including all the experts that you know and probably rely on today. We're just making it a lot more intuitive to actually leverage the insights directly within the platform. So I'm going to hand back to Alison. She's going to explain a little bit about how we do competitor analysis. Back to you, Alison.
Excellent. Okay. So I want to just kind of do a quick overview and talk about how we can leverage Visi and leverage our LLM to do competitive analysis. So like Fergal mentioned earlier, thinking about AI and how we're using AI responsibly and for the right jobs within the platform. So this is one that is a great fit. So LLMs excel at pattern matching across massive data sets, and they can help to highlight competitive strategies that might not have been surfaced and find things like recurring language, subtle themes that you may have missed, different ways to analyze competitor approaches. Among other things, there are great things that you can do from a scenario perspective. So being able to say, you know, what if competitor X underbids by 10%? Or what if competitors Y and Z enter into a teaming agreement? What does that like? How does that change the scope of my approach? So creating scenarios, working through documentation and looking for potential angles are a way that you can work with the LLM, work with Gen AI to strengthen your position and kind of have another consultant in the room with you. So just to give you some visibility here, on the left pane, we talked about, you know, the sections we were in writing and editing. So we're looking at differentiation. So on the right-hand side, you see your prompt library. So the prompt library, and we'll talk a little bit about this when we get into proposal preparation as well, but it's a way to create prompts that can be dynamic and reusable for specific areas and specific jobs throughout the process. So in this instance, we have sets of business development prompts looking at SWOT analysis, capture strategies, likely competitors, breakdowns of approaches, all of those types of things that we can factor in. So if you see the prompt that I'm using, so I have what differentiates Accenture, and the reason Accenture is my example is that we are doing an enterprise cybersecurity RFP, and they are a player in that space. So we're asking for differentiation from other competitors and how have they delivered services to this agency in the past. So we can run this type of prompt and then populate and get the content you see on the left. So structured charts looking at their processes, advanced technology, strategic partnerships, some of their innovations, government experience, a lot of information here. Now, the great news is that you do in your day-to-day a ton of work on creating competitor profiles, deeply understanding their solutions, their offerings, and how they compare to yours. All of that can be included in this analysis and in this content we're creating when we're using files or using collections. And again, I'll show you how that works later on, but just wanted to call that out, that this isn't just blanket search. This isn't just the LLM's opinion, that you can ground all of that in your data and your hard-fought research. So a secondary piece here, looking at another example, so looking at competitive strategy. So asking about likely competitors for this specific opportunity to this specific agency, and explain why and what their capture strategies would be. So just another way that we can look at likely competitors, break down who we might be going up against. Is there someone that we're missing? Is there can we surface a gap that we weren't aware of? So just other ways that we can dive in and dig into some different types of assessments. Like I said in the front end, when we were talking about our life cycle, you can do different scenarios here. We can break into different kind of outcomes or different kind of technical approaches. So a lot of different things that you can do. So it's a way to incorporate Gen AI in a really smart and useful way. Again, this supports the idea of there being a human in the loop. This isn't a replacement for all the work that you're doing and the analysis of your team. It's just a way to facilitate gathering the information and then dig deeper into some of the analysis. And I'll throw it back to you, Fergal.
Great, thanks so much. I've just realized I was answering some questions on the Q&A and my mic was not muted. Apologies to all. Good. Let me get into the proposal world. So at this point, we have got to the stage where we have qualified the opportunity. There was a question actually that came up in the Q&A as I was reviewing them, which is, what is the difference between this and the GovCon IQ best fit score? It's probably too detailed a question, but it's a great question. Suffice to say that that is a one score number and it's kind of a black box type thing. Our stuff in terms of its dimensional breakout is different and fully traceable back to the source and the confidence by which we can give the score, which is not to mean that the GovCon IQ score is not good, but it's more, you can make then a very clear judgment as to where that score is coming from and the justification for it. In any case, let me get on with proposals. So now we've kind of got our enterprise cybersecurity opportunity there or thereabouts. We're ready to kind of kick off the process. So now we're going to start the proposal process. And then for those who might be familiar with our existing products, today we have folders and files, as you well know, in BT Docs. So the platform will have an ability to see all concurrent proposals that you're currently managing. This is not to say that we want to kind of take over your world of spreadsheets or anything else, but it's a useful jumping off place to say, actually, you know what? We have these proposals in certain stages. You can, of course, customize these stages. And the one that we're going to look at is the in-process stage of enterprise cybersecurity solutions. That was what we just qualified. Now we're moving it into the proposal cycle. Great stuff. So one of the first things that we would do is the famous shred. And of course, when you're looking at it from a proposal standpoint, it is not to say that you may not have already shredded this in the earlier phases of sales BD and draft proposal. In fact, we recommend you absolutely do that, but certainly you definitely want to be shredding at this point if you're kicking into the proposal build out phase. So as we know, shredding is the first step in building a compliance matrix. So this is just the bog standard kind of relatively common will, shall, must shred. Again, as any of you who are familiar with our current products know, we have a massive capability in terms of search dictionaries. This is just one such search dictionary. The difference here, again, I will emphasize, is that this is existing within the product, and you have a full viewer to give you exactly where these will, shalls, and musts are occurring. And then the middle pane can tell you or allow you to mark and stamp the rows that you're seeing that we're either compliant or not compliant, or we have some issues around that. So this, if it's introduced earlier during the life cycle, which we always suggest and recommend, is always a good stopping or good thing to do. We will store all shreds so that you can come back to any shreds in the past. So all of that is archivable and auditable. Good stuff. Once we're done with our shred, then we're into kind of creating an outline. Again, this is not exhaustive. This outline has been generated using generative AI. And to emphasize one of our calling cards, we are large language model agnostic, meaning we don't really mind, particularly if you're running in air-gapped environments, we don't mind which LLM you use. We can integrate with any LLM in that context. And this is just a generated first pass of an outline. Of course, large language models do a nice job of that. This is based on your kind of solicitation. Is this the final version? Of course not. Then you as a human can start to indent, outdent certain things. You can add your own sections, you can reorganize. And then at this point, you're ready to take that forward and actually start writing towards the individual sections of the outline. So I'm just going to pass back to Alison. She's going to help us understand how we write to these individual sections. Over to you, Alison.
Okay. Oh, let me switch here. All right, great. So Fergal showed the outline, and the goal there is to move to action from a specific section or requirement. So whether you're identifying requirements in the solicitation or from the outline when we've identified specific sections that we need to respond to. So for this instance, I selected a specific requirement that I wanted to write to and have given instructions on how I wanted that information structured. So here in my bottom section, it says, explain how we satisfy the following requirement. And I pulled this requirement in from a solicitation. It's a contractor shall requirement around security operations centers and some certain diagnostics and mitigation. We'll get super into that. But pulled this requirement in and then gave an instruction, you'll see it on the next page, gave an instruction on how I wanted that information structured. So again, just like in our previous example, we can rely on this prompt library. We have this prompt library here for proposal prompts, utility prompts, and that's the human in the loop approach that we talked about earlier. So we want the AI to assist and facilitate you, but with your guidance. So moving on to the next slide. What we're seeing here are collections. So this is a really important part, if not the most important part of the writing capabilities within the VisibleThread platform. So on the grayed out area here, you see my prompt and you see the ability to use a collection. Earlier, I talked about the ability to ground the content that we're creating in our data. This is exactly what we're doing. So I've been asked a question about an item I must deliver, and it asks about my specific experience on some items. So what I can do is yes, we have SharePoint connectivity, so connectivity to local files, anything that is shared within a team, any SharePoint folder you have access to, you can access here. But anybody who's used this type of system before or referenced your data to generate content knows that you can have a couple things happen. If I'm just blanket pointing at SharePoint, so I'm just pointing out, I want you to answer this requirement based on my SharePoint folder files. Well, you're going to get a whole lot of noise. So proposals that you may have lost, things that you might have no bid, information that might not be up to date, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's going to pull in and you're not going to get a high quality response on your first pass for sure. So what you can do with VisibleThread is we can create collections. You can create collections of documents that are best practice for you, that you know are up to date, that are referencing certain programs, referencing things that are going to advance your position from a strategic or analytic perspective. So it's a really great way to focus in on the documents that you know are quality and you want to be referenced in this situation. So this is the collection that I'm going to use. I've shared this collection with Fergal as we worked on some of this together, so you can share it with other folks on your team and you can work collaboratively through this. So selecting that collection, I then have my prompt. So it's showing me my prompt based on that collection. And then here is the information. So this is an enterprise cybersecurity opportunity. I did this in the view of Cisco. So with This is all publicly available information on capabilities and programs that they've been involved in the past. But that's why you're seeing their name here. So essentially, with their capability statements, their technical documents, and past performance documents that were publicly available, I created documents that spoke to some of these requirements. So ultimately, the important thing is that I use source documentation to respond directly to a requirement that we pulled from the solicitation. And not only did it respond appropriately, everything is referenced. So all of the information is referenced and all of the documents are shown here. So we can see the documents and then some of the content that was pulled. And in our answer, we have all of our referenced information. So this is completely traceable. So that black box item that Fergal talked about in the front end, that it goes into the LLM and then comes out and you aren't quite sure if this is accurate, you're overcoming that by using collections that you know are based in fact and are based in quality work. And then those collections are directly referenced in the content you're creating in order to back check and make sure that everything is factual and that you're referencing the appropriate material. Then if all of that works, you can insert it into your proposal document or insert it into whatever document you're working through. And then you can begin to edit. So you can use some of those utility functions that we talked about earlier. If you want to do some editing, if you want to change some things, you can get into a back and forth conversation with Visi to shape the content as well as change things manually if you would like. So Fergal, I'll jump back to you for revisions.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Alison. So what we're now getting into is what happens when amendments drop. This would occur in the pre-proposal phase when there's a draft versus the final, or in the proposal phase when there's kind of amendments dropping as well. So it's kind of the idea of, well, what should we do? So what we're doing in VisibleThread in the platform is that we're taking the original document and the final document, and we're naming the report. Again, I'll refer to anybody who's familiar with VT Docs today. We have what we call the compare docs capability. This is an evolution of this, where we are naming the reports, we're storing the reports, and then we're actually presenting the report directly within the solution. So not just exporting to Excel and kind of do what you need to do in Excel, it's actually exposing that directly at your fingertips. And now you can start basically stamping certain amendments. So in this example, HR on the left-hand side has gone to human resources on the right. It's a fairly trivial, non-material change. Whereas the left-hand side, you can see the third row, there's an entire scope change. Learning management systems, while a subset of training and HC management is not in scope, it will not be addressed in the solicitations. It's missing from the final version. That's a high impact inference, and therefore we need to kind of go and actually investigate what's the impact to pricing, what's the impact to scope, what kind of solutioning do we need to do to actually support LMSs, etc. So this report is basically what we're doing today within VT Docs, except now you're controlling it directly within the solution. And you're now in the platform where basically you can go back on archives, you can mark reviews as being complete. You can still, of course, export to Excel. And then also you'll see that there's AI summarization capability as well here. So this is another classic example where we're not just throwing two docs into a compare AI routine and treating it as a black box. Okay, give me your best sense without, running the risk of hallucinations. Instead, we're actually doing this logical breakout of the changes and then using AI to help us get some insights on top of that. So as you look at this, there's a lot of power on the screen, and amendment handling is one of those things that actually is a very important element as you get into change management. That also will apply, of course, as you build out your own proposal volumes, and you need to see change management on that, and you need to see the difference between version 1 and version 2 of your proposals. So this view is a kind of a timeline. We're in about 40 minutes. There's quite a few questions, so I'll just very quickly go through this, and then we might open it up to Q&A. So we are launching what we're calling phase 1 early adopter. So we're really asking for customers to actually join us to give feedback. If you're evaluating VisibleThread products today, we'd love to have you involved in this program. We're launching that in the end of October. We will be exposing the software to any participants. We want you to kind of give us good feedback on it. It's your chance to influence what we're doing. So that's that first box. That's October 2025. Our product engineering team, and there's quite a few of them, are fully focused on this. It's a very exciting time for us as a company, and we're evolving to a much more interesting place, to be frank, as we actually evolve our product releases. We will release this in full production quality at the end of the year. You will see many of the things that we saw today, things like the opportunity search, you'll see best fit scoring, you'll see the proposal management Kanban, et cetera, et cetera. The release phase of 7.1 then will start to layer more and more things in. And as we go forward from now on, and again, in my role as Chief Product Officer, we will be releasing on a quarterly basis. So basically every quarter you will get releases. And then Alison and myself will be helping educate the community as to what's coming. And we'll do frequent updates with frequent webinars to give you insight as to what we're doing and the tempo we're going. I will say I'm hugely excited by the pace at which we're doing things. I'm excited by the innovation I'm seeing. I'm excited by the usage of AI that we have right now in the right way, using it in the right context. And that's super important. We do not believe generative AI or any technology is a silver bullet. We believe that used in a thoughtful, appropriate, task-driven way, it can be massively empowering and massively valuable for customers. So at this juncture, we might basically finish out with some questions. And Alison, I'll throw it back to you. Maybe you've had a chance to look at some of the questions. I know there were quite a few. I will say again, apologies to all those people who I'm sure I was hugely annoying. I was typing away some of the answers without realizing my mic was not muted. So huge apologies.
So we have a question about sourcing opportunities. Does the platform source the opportunities automatically, or do you need to do that manually?
Yeah, so the opportunities are sourced automatically. So the feed that you were looking at in that earlier slide was from sam.gov. As we're looking at this, we'll be layering in feeds from eBuy, which is, again, from contract vehicle standpoint, as well as GovCon IQ. So you can expect that to be coming down the line as well. But you can also add manual opportunities. So you can do it in both ways.
Okay, excellent. That answered a couple questions because there were questions on sourcing from other areas and manually adding opportunities. Question about past performance. So how does VisibleThread know what past performance to reference? Is that something that needs to be set up on the front end, and how is that maintained?
Yeah, and again, it's a super question because it goes to a core issue of data integrity or data cleanliness, let's say. So yes, you must point any solution at what you're going to use for past performance. If you point at a massive SharePoint repository and say, go magically figure out your past performance, your problem there is that you're going to get garbage in, garbage out scenarios. Now, certain vendors will do that. We do not believe that that's a smart approach. Our approach is that you basically say, okay, we have these past performance contracts. You set them up, you point at SharePoint if those contracts live in SharePoint, or you basically upload them from the file system if they exist as just kind of file shares. And then we will use those and corral our answers based on those. So it's super important. It's very important that you manage that. The important thing with the SharePoint side is that, and again, it's something that we're very excited with, we will have full bidirectional integration into SharePoint coming as part of the VisibleThread platform. So that means that any updates on the SharePoint side, if you're linking to those contracts, you will automatically get the updates. So that data management issue goes away. But we want to corral the content in the same way as you talked earlier, Alison, about the value of collections. You don't want to pick up garbage content, which might be old or out of date. You want to kind of corral that content into good quality sets. It's the same thing for contracts.
Excellent. Okay. Question about the offerings. So the early adopter program what are the offerings? Is there an on-prem offering, or is that cloud only?
So for the early adopter program, it is cloud only. And the best way to view that is it's an opportunity to give us feedback on what we're building. You can influence what we're building, and we can make sure that we're building the right thing. So it is cloud only. So anybody who is interested in that program who must be on-prem, let's talk and we'll see if we can facilitate something in that regard. But in the timeframe that we're talking about, October, it's all hands on deck to do the cloud-based approach.
Excellent. And another kind of security question, how is the data that we're analyzing being protected? So maybe you want to talk a little bit about the deployment options.
Yeah. So in the early adopter program is a feedback loop. View it like that. It's a chance for us to work with you guys and to see what's hitting the mark and what isn't. And we're very honest about that. We want to hear the good and the bad. I hope there aren't too many bad feedback loops, but there may be, and it's important to hear that. In terms of overall security posture and kind of data, it's a huge topic. So as I mentioned at the outset, we've been 15 years in this sector, in this business, working with government contractors, and the biggest defense and space US government contractors work with us, and they are all, without exception, deployed internally behind their firewall. They're either deployed into their own private clouds. Maybe it's GCC High running on Azure, or maybe it's AWS FedRAMP certified, or it's running on a physical machine or a virtual machine. These are IT questions, of course. So security in our context, no data ever goes in or out of the firewall in those deployments. Your large language model, which is the engine of AI, we integrate with the one that's typically approved in a large organization, and there are typically 1, 2, 3 approved large language models, but we never ship with the large language model. That data is yours, you own it, we never see it. In the context of an offering that we're launching in Q4, which is basically where we'll manage a FedRAMP certified and a kind of a cloud environment, a Gov cloud environment. In that context, again, there will be private tenants, and they will be opportunities for you to basically upload CUI and related data into that cloud. And that's something that we're also excited to launch in Q4. So we have multiple different security appropriate postures for most scenarios.
Okay, excellent. And then question here, and to everybody, I put a question in the chat if anybody wants to answer. So question about collaboration. So if multiple people are writing on a bid, is the information shareable across all collaborators, or is it stored in a specific user's account? So how can folks collaborate?
Sure. So our collaboration model within VT Docs today and also within the VisibleThread platform is when you are writing content, then that content in the views that both you were showing, Alison, and I was showing around writing content, that content is available to all of the people in that workspace. So within the VisibleThread platform, there's a concept of workspaces. Workspaces are an ability to partition out different users. Typically, a workspace might be, a contracts team has one workspace. A proposal or sales BD capture team might have a separate workspace. Legal might have their separate workspace. Different divisions might have their separate workspaces. So they're logical areas. Within the workspace, all users can see that content. Our model in the context of the views that we were showing you is a locking model. It means that when you start to edit, you have an implicit lock on that content so that other users cannot see that content until you've saved the content. So that's a locking model. I should also mention, as part of the VisibleThread platform, we will always also have an add-in, a Microsoft Word add-in, which is modeled off the same behavior pattern that anybody who's familiar with VT Writer knows today, but it will work with the VisibleThread platform. And that, again, from a collaborative standpoint, many of our customers are using that today, using SharePoint, for instance, and co-authoring capabilities that are native to Microsoft, using the add-in in that context. So all of that will work absolutely seamlessly in that context. So multiple models for collaboration, but we battle tested all of that in our VT Docs and VT Writer products, which are basically being amalgamated into this VisibleThread platform.
Excellent. So, question about the competitive analysis piece and the scoring formula. So on the competitive analysis, will there be a scoring formula similar to the best fit? So in the best fit, you're getting a score. With competitive analysis, will there also be scoring or the ability to generate a score?
It's a great question. So scoring, it works very well when you've got reliable data and you've got reliable comparison points. So we can score past performance versus what's in the SOUR or the PWS. That's a very doable piece of automation. When you think about best fit analysis, when you think about kind of competitor analysis and the types of examples you were showing, you're now getting generated content from the LLM. So the scoring then is a slightly different animal because the LLM is possibly prone to hallucinations. So you need to double check what you're getting. And the views that you showed us and where you're asking the LLM to give you a competitive insight is going to be human in the loop type stuff. So personally, I'm less clear that there's an obvious way to score that content other than the human making a judgment about what they're reading. But certainly it's a very interesting question and it's something that we would love to get deeper insights into. If whoever asked that question is willing to and open to participating in the early adopter program, that'll be fantastic. Or equally, if you want to kind of have a sidebar about that whole question, I'd love to hear a little bit more around thoughts on that. But personally, I don't know if there's a silver bullet magic score you can do on that, but perhaps I'm not seeing all the data. And the data for me is king. And that's what we really need to actually make that assessment.
So a couple more questions. What are the options for collaboration for external users? So like consultants, teaming partners who don't need a full license, but may need access to a specific opportunity. What would be our recommendation for folks to handle? How should folks handle that?
So in the context of today and what we see our customers doing today, they're using our products and they're exposing the product, if needs be, to externals using a VPN typically, or using some variation on that. So it's a technical setup question. If you're looking to share with external partners, teaming partners, our reports, you can generate the reports as Excel, typically as Excel spreadsheets, reasonably easily, albeit they don't have a live connectivity to the platform, but I would argue maybe they don't need live connectivity. Maybe they don't need to consume a license. It seems like a more sensible approach. Again, it just depends on the context. So there are multiple approaches. And then I should say the VT Writer product as is a product that will continue to run in cahoots with the VisibleThread platform. So it's a separate, lighter product. So typically, if you're looking at team and partners, if they're writing content and you need to review that content, it may be that actually having them using VT Writer is perfectly adequate, and combined with the reports that you can export from the platform.
Okay, a couple questions on the transition and what that means for VT Docs and VT Writer as they are. So with the roll of the new platform, will the originals, VT Docs and VT Writer, be standalone services, or will current users need to upgrade to the new platform in order to access VT Docs specifically?
Sure. So let me break it out into two. Any VT Writer customers will continue to use VT Writer as is. Any VT Docs customers, your upgrade cycle will be to the VisibleThread platform. So that will be the upgrade cycle. So you will be on the VisibleThread platform as opposed to the VT Docs platform, or the VT Docs product, should I say. And again, if you're interested in commercials around that, I would recommend chatting to your account manager and getting detail. We will absolutely be super conscious of kind of what we're positioning and not making it, we're not a vendor that comes in and says, right, all of a sudden you're paying 50% more on this product. That is not the way it will be. It'll be a very sensible and reasonable approach, but I would urge you to talk to your account manager for more details on that.
And then there was one more question about cost, and I'll echo Fergal's point that speak to your either account managers or any AEs or folks that you're working with. If you are a new customer or you have specific questions there, you can reach out on some of our multiple channels, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you have around cost or a setup or security or anything like that. But yes, everybody that is attending the webinar, our AEs will get a list of their customers that attended the webinar today, and we'll be following up and answering any questions that you have as well. Will these updates speak to or benefit other teams beyond bid and proposals? We have a contracts user, and a lot of companies do a lot of compares and dictionary search for our clauses. So how does this benefit a non-BD or non-traditional proposal user?
Yeah, I apologize. We probably, and again, Alison, you and I were working on this deck quite recently, as in 5 minutes before this session, but there you go. We didn't put as much in here for contracts management, but rest assured, we've got a ton of customers using this all day long for contracts management. Amendment handling is a key element of that. Very focused FAR, DFAR dictionary searches are key in that element. The traceability is critical in that point. So apologies for the lack of coverage on that space of contract management, but that's fundamentally, if we think about the stakeholders that use the product today, we're really looking at proposal people. We're looking at BD capture. This rounds out the BD capture side in a more accessible way, I'll put it like that. And contracts is actually a huge part. And program delivery and program management is a big part as well. So for us, when we speak about end-to-end lifecycle, we're speaking about all of those stakeholders, not just one over the other. And traditionally, I think there's been a perception, perhaps somewhat well-founded, that we were proposal management only. But to be clear, many of our customers today use our products, but they have to work a little bit to use them well for sales BD purposes. And absolutely, they use them all day long for contracts and contracts reviews.
And then we have 1 minute, but I'm going to ask one last question because I want you to address some of the customizations. So the question was, can we edit the competitive analysis scoring algorithm? And I know there are some things that folks can do from a customizations perspective. So I want you to just quickly touch on that if you can.
Yeah, it's a great question. So one of the examples would be, our default position would be we need to find at least 5 contracts that have similar past performance for that customer. So is it 5? Is it 3? Is it 22? That's a customization that you'll see in there. But certainly we would love, and again, that person that asked the question, we'd love to hear your thoughts on customization. The more real-world feedback we get, the better we'll have a product that works for everybody. But certainly our intention is to be able to customize in the same way as we've customized the Kanban board to show the different, color team reviews or whatever makes sense in your context. Not everybody is a color team shop. You might have different stages, etc.
Excellent. So we are at time. Just reiterate to everybody that you will be receiving after the slides and recording. There's a link in the console, but then we will also include the links to what we mentioned earlier, which is the sign up for the early adopter program and the link to our October forum. And we have the Q&A here. We'll go back through these and anything that wasn't addressed or anything that anybody that we might want to connect with to get more context, get those reach outs. And then, like I said, your account managers and AEs will get a list of everybody who attended today, and we'll follow up to make sure you don't have any questions or answer any questions you may have. So this is just the beginning of this conversation, and we are so excited for you all to have joined us today. We're really excited for the next, 6 to 12 months and what the product is going to look like. Our super interested to hear your input on the early adopter program, your input on some of the things that we discussed today. So we want to make this as collaborative as possible and to continue to support you like we have for the last, nearly 20 years. So we're really excited for next steps and can't wait to continue the conversation. And that's all. And I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of their day and rest of their week. Thank you.
Thanks, Alison. Thanks, everyone.